So, welcome back to the PHENIX Investigations podcast. We've got a great episode today. We have Janet Henson, Director of Surveillance, and Joel Weiss, Senior Investigator, the Asset Search Guru. So, we're going to talk about how these two experts work together to solve complex cases. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us again.
Yeah, excited. So typically we're talking about just your specialization. And one of the things that we always touch on in every episode is PHENIX's wide set of resources and how you collaborate and are able to solve kind of more challenging, complex cases. Do you just want to introduce kind of what your specialization is and how you interact with your counterpart? And Janet, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Yeah. So my expertise is surveillance. That's pretty much what I'm in charge of. And complex cases as well, depending on what the client needs. Now, as far as working with assets, I'll do the field work, the surveillance work, things like that to see what their assets are. And Joel would do the deep dive into the online stuff, the banking, the financials, things like that.
Joel, is it typically your clients that you're working with on an asset search where you'll uncover something that needs field surveillance and you engage Janet, or is it the opposite or both?
Yeah, so a little bit of both. So a lot of our clients will come to us directly for surveillance and end up needing assets or something for like in-office work after, and then vice versa. They come to us directly for assets or get directed to us by an attorney, and we end up doing the asset. The investigation evolves into needing field work from there.
Like, what's an example of someone that comes in for an asset, just like a real life example of something that starts as an asset that ends up getting knocked over into Janet's side for surveillance?
Yeah, I mean, I work on several cases that deal with a lot of like construction work. That either a smaller construction company, I've had a couple of larger ones as well, hit either a wall, whether they, promise too much work or promise really good work and do shoddy work. And then people end up, suing them for breach of contract or something like that. So we end up going through the process either during litigation or post judgment if they do get the judgment, doing the asset investigation, seeing what they have, and if or sometimes if it's not a whole lot on paper, we end up doing surveillance on that company, going to where they operate out of, whether that's the person's house if it's a smaller business or an actual business facility. We look for obviously physical assets that they have sitting there, because a lot of construction companies have big equipment that doesn't need to be registered through the state, doesn't have to have any kind of ties to it after you buy it. And so we look for that stuff that the client could either negotiate to get some of their money back on if they go and take that equipment. The other side is we also look for any other types of logos. Do they have a support company that we didn't know about, a partner that we didn't know about? Something to that line that we can then expand the investigation further to see if we can collect on the judgment. We also have a couple of different or a couple of other areas like marriage disputes, child custody cases we do surveillance on. So come to us, through the divorce, and then a lot of times if it's infidelity or something to that degree, if they've, like financial abuse, really giving your spouse an allowance or something like that throughout the entire marriage, and then through the divorce, they don't really know where anything is. And so we do surveillance on that end, see where they're going, who they're meeting, stuff like that.
So, Janet, when you get a call, from Joel's side of the business, how often is it that you know exactly what you're looking for, or are you just going out and seeing what there is to see and looking for leads and clues? What does that look like?
So if somebody's going to the extent of hiding their financials, especially on paper, you never know what you're going to go out and see. And that's one of the whole reasons why we push for surveillance, to be able to get that visual. And I just had a case not a few weeks ago regarding this exact situation, and it was a child custody case. And this is a perfect example that I can give you that would help you kind of understand how that goes. Um, So it was a child custody case. On paper, the guy and in court, the male subject says that he doesn't make any money, he's broke, he can't afford child support, and so on paper, that's what it looks like. So we recommended surveillance just to make sure that he doesn't have assets. He's not enjoying life like he claims in court. We go out there, we do a few days of surveillance. We we find out that he has 7 vehicles, Corvettes. They have, covers over them. They're all his, but they're registered to somebody else's name, but they're at his residence. He owns a business, but he rents a parking lot on the weekend to put vehicles out there to sell. So he's a salesman, but on paper, he doesn't have a dealership. He doesn't have a job. So we were able to prove all that, put it in a report. And now when the client goes to court, we'll be able to show he does work every day. He is purchasing vehicles. He had a total of 7 vehicles at his house. So there's, different ways to do it. But if we didn't go out and do surveillance, we would have never known that.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds very likely to be a life-changing outcome for the client in terms of
Correct.
getting what they're owed.
Correct. Yeah.
So needless to say, there's cases exactly like that happening probably every day that do not have surveillance attached to it, where things are successfully hidden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's times where you go out and do surveillance, and whether it's from the asset side or just direct surveillance, and I can tell Janet all day long that from my professional opinion, this guy looks broke on paper, is trying to conceal his assets, but he may not be. He may legitimately just be broken, and it's just something that I typically see, and he follows that pattern, but ultimately ends up really not having anything. So, I mean, there are plenty of cases like that.
Janet, how helpful is it to have someone on the other side like Joel who, to his point, is able to recognize patterns, in that there's a really good chance that there is something to look for? How does that, if at all, change your approach to surveillance?
It helps a lot. Anytime you work with another person and see things through their eyes or, through their experience, it always helps. So if you have that, and that's one of the reasons PHENIX works so well, and gets the results that we get, because we all do run cases by one another. Hey, what are your thoughts on this? Or, have you had something like this? What did you do? So it's great. There's definitely perks to it.
Jenna, what does it look like? We talked about the example of like Joel kicking, kind of field work to you. What does it look like for a surveillance case to go to the asset search side?
It does happen. I'm going to say it happens the other way more often than surveillance needing assets. But if we're following them and they tend to stay home and they seem like they're not doing a lot, that's when I will say, okay, let's go on paper. Let's see what is happening. They're probably doing something, but it's just not, outside activity. So then that's when I'll say, let's do an asset.
That makes sense. So if, the surveillance is kind of at a standstill, it's an alternate source to get a direction to go.
Correct.
Interesting. Awesome. How often are, Joel, you're doing a volume of asset search cases. How often do they require field surveillance?
I recommend more field work a lot of times than what clients go and actually do. A lot of the asset stuff, if it's done for like pre-litigation or during litigation, a lot of those next steps don't ever come right away. It's months after, or when they get through the litigation process and things. I would say, 40 to 50%, I could probably recommend field work on that many cases, if not a little bit more. Um, Unfortunately, that's where price becomes some of an issue for some clients, of because it does get more expensive when you have people on the ground and doing that type of work. So a lot more recommendations than it actually happening.
Sure, obviously to have, experienced experts out in the field for hours and days at a time, there is a cost associated with that.
Yeah.
Um, Professionals don't come cheap. So how do those conversations with clients, obviously in almost every sort of service industry, there's an idea. Yes, emotions are involved a lot and we stop thinking rationally sometimes. But you're talking about return on investment to some level with these folks. How do those conversations go where they're waffling on should I or should I not do surveillance?
Yeah, I mean, typically they end up going pretty well. Most clients, as long as no matter if it's on the surveillance side or the asset side first, if you can articulate what you did, how it helped them, and then why the next step is going to be that much better, it's usually never a case of like, are they doubting us or our capability or anything like that. It's either time or money that it really comes down to. And so then it's how you present it. Can we work with them? So a lot of times, on divorce cases, child custody cases, my recommendation is always 3 days starting out. And I typically tell them, hey, if there's child custody cases, if you're worried about the spouse, doing drugs around the kid, bringing people that they shouldn't around the kid, going out and partying, it's like, okay, then that's either going to be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
Mm.
the typical time that most people are going to go out and do those things. And then we usually either start one day in the morning, one day towards the evening, and then do another day um, really late on either Friday or Saturday, something like that.
That makes a lot of sense. That was a big duh to me. Janet, you've obviously been doing this for a long time and you've seen no one's seen everything, but you've probably come pretty close to it. Um, how often are those 3 days enough to tell you the story? Like if you followed me around Thursday, Friday, and Saturday,
Yeah, it's a good start, and it can be all we need. It really just depends on the level of activity of the target or subject, and then what they're looking for. If they're looking to see if they have a certain vehicle, a high-end vehicle, and we get there and on day 3 we see it, well, then yeah, they have it, type of thing. So it hit and miss, to be honest with you.
do you get a sense when you see someone and how they're behaving, like almost immediately have an intuition of what type of person and what their behaviors are?
Yes. That's definitely, um, for the most part, people are creatures of habits. So once you follow them for a day and you get to know them, and it's going to be kind of the same thing the next day.
When I talk to you, I think, I was in retail 20 plus years ago and my coworkers and I, when someone would come in, we would, we would feel like fortune tellers saying like, this is what I think they're going to be doing. Is that kind of how it feels to you? Like, um, does that ever, does that ever create assumptions in your mind based, early in the investigation that later turn out to be not what you expect?
Sure. That's one of the main things with doing the investigations is the word assume. You never ever assume. And the reason why is because if that's what you assume they're going to go home. You're following them. You assume they're going to go home because they're in their neck of the woods, and you get there and they've gone somewhere else. They've just passed through it. So you never jump ahead.
Yeah, every individual conversation I have with you guys, the concept of validation comes up
Mhm.
over and over and over again. Is that a weakness with more novice investigators, is operating on assumptions and kind of finishing the story prematurely?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
for
mean,
me it is.
yeah, I
Definitely.
say that's definitely strong in our training of with anybody. I mean, we get asked our professional opinions all the time, and it's okay to give them to clients, when they're asking about it. But I always caution the degree of when those questions come up of can you prove it? Can you articulate it well? If it goes beyond just a conversation, what are we going to do then? And if the answer is no, you can't do any of those things, then either preface that of, hey, this, I get asked like advice for that you would ask an attorney. It's like, okay, well, hey, I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice. I can't direct you in any way, but here's my professional opinion. So giving those cautions beforehand, stuff like that. Anything into a report, I always tell everybody that I'm training those same things. If you can't articulate it, you can't prove it, don't put it in the report. It can be part of a conversation, but if there's nothing that you can do to back it up and validate it, then it probably doesn't need to belong on paper then.
Yeah.
No, that's really good. I mean, you're all, I guess, through conditioning, or you're very careful with the words that you say more so than other people because they carry a lot more weight than other industries.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
it's very easy to get sucked into the mundane of any job, doesn't matter what it is, just the little tasks that you do every single day and not realize that, what I write today is going to go into court in the next 2 weeks, be in front of a jury, be in front of a judge, and, cost somebody thousands, if not millions of dollars. It's easy to lose sight of a lot of that stuff as you're just going through your day-to-day operations.
Correct. Another thing too is if you write an opinion on your report, that gives the defense an opportunity to ask, is it fact or opinion? And those are things that you want to avoid if you go into court and testify.
That was a question that was in my mind is, so like when you're doing the work that you're doing, you're always deeply conscious of the downstream of what you do and the weight of it. So you mentioned opinion. Are you ever writing in reports, and marking it such that this is not verified, however, this is an opinion, or do you strictly keep that out of reports? It's fact only.
Strictly out of reports. You can give your recommendation of what you think should happen next, the next steps, but for me, opinions stay out of the report.
Some of that uh, goes into assets sometimes. It's very rare. A lot of those are going to be, if a record has like first and last name only and no other identifying information, but it's in the same county that your subject lives in or the same state. No matter what, it still fascinates me. I've always kind of been fascinated with every job that I've been in of just like knowing people's names, where that name comes from, those types of things. And no matter how unique you think your name is, there's, tens, 20s, if not hundreds of people in your same state that have the same exact name. So a lot of times if I find a record and it just does have that first and last name only that I can link to it, I have to put it in there. If I think it may be in the realm of possibility that it is our subject, but I can't verify it, I would put that caution in there of like, this was found using these identifiers. I can't verify anything else, but here's the information.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I know. Just like looking online in the marketing world, you look at leads and there's people of the same name working similar careers in the same states. Whereas we're just not as unique as we think we are.
Now, I've actually had, to the degree that I've had, multiple subjects that have the same first, middle, last name and the same first five numbers of their social security and only the last four that are different, that live in the same town and didn't know each other.
Oh, so it can be very easy to make an incorrect assumption in this world if you're not validation focused.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, great example of that, looking for like death records. If you're dealing with, junior, senior, or even junior, senior, and the third, a lot of those individuals have the same exact first, middle, last name, and the only differentiating factor is the suffix, the junior, senior, third, and then obviously their date of birth. Um, but some counties and states just don't get that detailed either, so you have to be very careful when you're looking in certain instances at those types of records.
Boy, there's a lot to it. I guess, something in my mind, and on the subject of your final reports, when you two are working together or your departments are working together, how are you creating the reports? Are you collaborating on one final deliverable or are you creating separate reports? What does that look like for the end customer?
We've
Or
done both. Depending on the case, the client, the facts that were found, the evidence. It really depends. If it's a phase A and a phase B, maybe we would go that route. But if they called and they were like, we want an asset and we want a surveillance, that's not going to be two different phases. So then we'll collaborate together and, make one report.
In your world, a phase would be you call for an asset search, you do that, and then Joel would make a recommendation for field work, and that would be a phase B, or what is that?
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
It sounds like it sounds like the case from the conversations I've had where more often someone comes in with one thing and then it turns into more things.
That is always, well, I don't want to say always, but that's always our goal, is to get as much as we can evidence and to make the case solid. So anytime if you didn't get your answer with what was done, keep going. What's the next step? What are, sometimes it could be an asset, sometimes it could be a social media, sometimes it can be a locate intelligence, so it really just depends.
How do you decide what enough information is? Obviously, like you time and time again, you talk about, outcomes focus, and you could always learn more about somebody with more observation. How do you, as a professional, decide as a good steward to the customer when enough is enough?
I mean, to be honest, it never is. No matter what in, the surveillance world, and I'm sure Janet can agree to this, if you ask her how many days you should do surveillance, it's how many can you afford or how many can you give me? And the more you're going to be able to do on her side, same with mine, the more time, energy, and hours I spend on it, the more information I'm going to find, which is only going to benefit you. So a lot of times it's like we ask, what are those, whatever, it doesn't matter how many, but what's your questions that you need answered right now? And then once you have that, you can present that type of information. And then again, it's what can we recommend? Did we answer all the questions? Did we answer them thoroughly enough? Now that we've answered your 5, 6 questions, do you have 5 or 6 more from that information?
And they usually do. Like and he says questions, and that's correct. I say objectives. So when I say that, don't think it's anything different. It's not. When you're talking with the clients or whatnot, one of the main things is objective. What is it that you want? And once you get that objective, that's when you should either say, okay, here it is. This is what you wanted. This is, 9 times out of 10, it's not enough. They want to continue. Okay, well, you got that. Well, what about this? What about that? And then you say, okay, what's your objective for the next one?
Yeah, it sounds it's a really straightforward approach to selling or strategizing with the client that you have. So it's pretty much how much attention do you want a professional, experienced person to put on this? And then is your initial objective enough, or presented further objectives or questions? Do you want us to close those threads as well?
Yeah, and I think we've done a really good job on our asset. We have some I think we've talked about in the past, the financial profile and advanced asset.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, those both are kind of the starting points, one for a deeper dive, the other for basic information. And, we've tried to say, okay, what's the general questions that people want to do or want to answer when they call us for an asset? And that's what we've put together in those. And then usually if they are asking further, deeper dived questions that are going to require more time, then we can customize everything for each client that way.
Is that, in PHENIX world, it's, it starts with an asset search and then goes to a full asset investigation, like a true asset investigation? Or do you think about it in different words?
I mean, it starts there, and a lot of times it depends on, when the client calls and what they need. If they are an attorney, if they are a business person, if they are, somebody who got a judgment and has no idea what the hell they're doing from that point on. We get a lot of regular people that call us and they're like so happy that they won their judgment. They won this lawsuit on whoever they sued. And, it's kind of our job, or at least my job, to tell them, hey, you kind of won half the battle here. And now the real work starts of trying to actually collect on it. Because right now you've got a piece of paper that
Yeah.
says somebody owes you something, but it's not going to do anything on the collecting portion of it. You got attorneys who are like, hey, I just need this specific thing answered about assets, and that's all I need right now during the litigation. So it kind of depends on what their needs are at the time. And that's why we give recommendations, we give consultations, we give phone calls, during and after, because once a case starts, it will change depending on what information we actually find.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting reality that some people like. Your clients rarely, I'm sure, are thinking about what happens behind the curtain. They ask for something and then they get a report. And I think some people forget about the reality that you don't know what things are going to turn into. So you can't say black or white what the next week is going to look like. And it's sort of nebulous and gray. What are those conversations like with clients that might not immediately understand that this is not a straight line that you're walking and it's not a ones and zeros black and white world? Is there pushback you get from that? Janet,
Oh,
you're
yeah. Go ahead, Janet.
Yeah, go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, we have those types of conversations all the time. People, whether it's at the end and they want to know how we get the information. We have people on the front end that want to talk through every single detail, and it's, what can you guarantee? And it's, you can't. You can never guarantee what a county keeps. Every single county in the country is different on their record keeping, how long they keep stuff, what they keep. Was there a fire, 2 years ago that destroyed everything? I've had that happen to where the records are just gone. Right now, it doesn't happen too often right now, but 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people looking at records that are 10, 15 years old, that's kind of when a lot of the country was digitizing stuff. And every single record keeping company in the United States had to decide whether it was, can we actually digitize this information? Is it going to be useful? Do we pay the money to actually do that or keep it in paper form? And so there's some records where you have to go in person, you have to go request it, and you have to look at it in that exact spot instead of online, because it's just not there at all.
Oh.
never thought about that. The moving from a paper to digital world, that's such a mind blow.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I would say what, Janet, probably 95 to 2000's kind of been the cutoff of like when most records are available. And then there's some, that go back a little bit more than that have been digitized. But people that are doing that, I mean, it's very slow and very, very costly to do so. So they kind of just stop doing that now.
Correct.
It sounds like in the marketing world, something I caution people about is one of the surest signs of inexperience is making promises and guarantees. And it sounds like something similar you deal with in your world. I would imagine your clients appreciate the directness and transparency from the like, I don't know what we're going to see and I don't know exactly what the outcome is because how could I?
Yeah. Most do, but there are some that see the TV shows and seem that it's easy. Well, you just push a few buttons and you know where they've been, for the last 24 hours or whatever. People think that, but it's not true. And a lot of people do get that. So it just depends on the client.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of oversimplification in movies and TV, but your industry has been done a hilarious disservice by it's
Very much so.
totally
Yeah.
unrecognizable from reality. And when I started getting into your space, a year or two ago, I was a victim of it too. I made a lot of incorrect assumptions about the simplicity of it. It's unbelievably complex.
Yeah. It's easy to do so. I mean, on the asset side, people think of the digital world as it's easy as to type in somebody's name and hit enter. And that's not the case in the surveillance world. How hard is it to sit in a car and watch somebody? I mean, it's incredibly difficult, to not only follow somebody, but to be out there in the elements. My first surveillance that I ever did, was 2 weeks straight sitting in a vehicle with all the windows rolled up in the middle of July in Chicago. And I was working 12-hour shifts out of the van. And, I don't even know how hot it was, but it was almost unbearable. And, to do that for 2 weeks straight was a rough introduction to surveillance for me.
And you're still here.
Yes. It's interesting. You just don't think, you think sit, wait, eat Chinese, take out, but it's like no one considers the hundreds of micro decisions and big make or break choices that you have to make during this. It's
Yes.
not just sleeping, waiting for something to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And people also don't think about what might happen out there not related to your case, that you're now a witness to. And do you speak up? Do you say something, or do you just not? And that's happened. I've seen people get mugged. I've seen, and so or attacked, and you're like, oh, what? And it has nothing to do with your case.
Golly, I've taken a half hour from you guys' day. I want to close out with a question maybe for Janet. So you started your career at a much smaller firm, and coming to PHENIX, obviously you got a different set of resources and relationships to work from. What does it do for you as a surveillance professional to have people like Joel and his team? How valuable is that set of resources for you, and how does that change your approach to surveillance?
A great deal. It's always good having, like I said, different people's opinions on, what's happening on a case, what they've done, how they handled it. And it's instead of your 5 years of experience that you may have when you're starting with a small company, or 20 years experience, now you have all of their experience. So it makes you feel like you got 100 years of experience in different things, so
Mhm.
it helps out a lot.
I think that's a really good a really good comment. Obviously, a lot of your customers and clients are attorneys,
Mhm.
and I think that they don't think how their practice relates to you. The more legal experts they have, the faster they arrive at solutions because they can draw on the entire team's experience.
Yes.
It relates to you as well. Ultimately, your job is to broker information, and you have a lot of masters of that to draw on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that actually just reminds me of a question that I got asked the other day. We were gathering some information on direction of a client, and I got asked, why this information is free to get, or anybody can go get it. Why didn't they just do it? And a pretty harsh reality is, I said before, every county, every state is different on their record keeping. So a lot of attorneys tap us on the shoulder to go look for records just because either they don't know where to go get it, or they just don't want to expend the time to go do it. And when you have somebody who does it every day, it's just like a mechanic. I could go fix my own transmission, but it's going to take me a year and, however many hours on YouTube to do so, or I can go pay somebody to do it in a day. So it's, working with attorneys. I mean, we work with them all the time in that regard of like, they know that they could send somebody out to do it, but it may take them way too much time and money to go do it.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of experience is it shows you what doesn't work and eliminates a lot of wasted time and bad paths to walk down.
Yeah.
Guys, this was a really awesome conversation. I love having both of you on there. Looking forward to doing this again. But
Yeah.
appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys again.
Thank you.
Fun as always.